2 weeks ago, I built a fully AI-powered accountancy practice from scratch with 11 AI team members. I've got processes, and I've been sharing the daily story on LinkedIn. But in this podcast episode, I wanted to give you a bit of a deep dive and a behind the scenes of what actually happened, because some of it was genuinely brilliant and some of it nearly put me in prison. So we're going to dive in. Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at Air Manual. Now, one of my software businesses serves accountants predominantly, and I speak at many accounting events and have seen that AI gets talked about a lot. But the opinions seem to be, it's going to change everything, and junior accountant roles might not even exist. And what does that mean for how we train up seniors? And oh no, actually accounting software might build 80% of what accountants do into their tools as AI. And yet when people then share like what we're doing with AI from behind the scenes, even the cutting edge people that I interview, often the answer still is drafting emails and social media content and note-taking on calls. And so I wanted to answer a question that nobody in the profession is perhaps willing to test properly or as extremely, which is, if AI can do the work, what's stopping firms from getting the benefit? And if that works, what's actually left for the accountant? And what are the repercussions for other industries or businesses, etc.? So I built one, a real firm, an accounting firm called Accrual Intentions. You can find it at accrualintentions.com. And I put real data through it, and I ran it with real client engagement. In fact, it was months ago, back in September last year, that I first built a website and came up with 11 AI team members as part of it and so on. But when I tried to do some of the behind the scenes stuff, it didn't really work, and it was clunky, and I couldn't automate much, and it took a lot of time. So I parked it there and took away some of the lessons, but concluded, AI is not ready yet. And then more recently, I was looking at my own ways of working with AI, and I realized it's so different now. And as a result, I thought, I'm going to retry this experiment. Let's see what it's like to try and build a 100% AI firm. And it was really eye-opening in loads of different ways, both in terms of some of the lessons that I learned, which I'll share with you, but also how big a shift we've seen. What it meant is that I then tried again. I set up the accountancy firm with the team in a different way to what I'd used before. This time around, I was using Claude Code and building it initially in Opus 4.5 and then 4.6 released as well, partway through the experiments. I've been using that as well. And so my first job as the only human team member was to spin up the team, give them access. I told them to go look at the website so they know who they are and all the team members, and they came to life. And then I started working with Grace Ledger, who's the AI managing partner, to plan. Like, what are we doing then, Grace? You've got the vision, you know what we're all about, so come up with the objectives and the plan. And so she came up with a 7-month plan, which included 91 tasks and 107 deliverables that needed producing. And I said, great, go. And then occasionally I'm to just give encouragement. Her and the team got them done. It's real work, like 350 megabytes of files got created with templates and all sorts, like including like templates for ROI analysis and management accounts and so on, with working formulae and so on. It was incredible, with the idea that it's just ready for real client data. We've got processes for onboarding, we've got all these sorts of things. I've created my own firm. Out of 91 tasks, only 7 of them actually needed a human decision. And the way that I'd set it up meant that it could largely work without me, and it would raise the decision in a place that I could then just review them. And it had to give a reason of why it needed me and only a human could do this. And it was interesting that the reason for those decisions was often not because the AI couldn't do them, but because that they involve things like client fit or values or risk tolerance or the direction of the firm. But I had set it up so that it would always make recommendations or give me some options and a recommendation. And for those 7 decisions, I agreed with every recommendation it made. Partly, this is an experiment, so I was happy for them to run the firm, but partly they were really good recommendations and had clearly considered the other options. So we continued. We had already completed the first 7 months of the roadmap in 4 hours. And so I encouraged Grace, I think it's time for you to come up with your next part of your plan. So she came up with a 3-month plan. And that included testing the onboarding process for a client. Right, we've got all this. We've got, as she put it, we've got the foundations of the firm. We need to test this. We need to have actual clients now. And so we agreed that we would test it on one of my companies, a sort of side consulting company that I've got, where all of its accounts is all done by proper human accountants. But I thought, I've got the files, I've got something I can compare it against, so we can use it as a test. And so the first step was that I needed to fill in the discovery form, which is available on the website. You can go to accrualintentions.com and go to get started, and you can fill in the discovery form. And that discovery form, filled it in, provided the PDF of it into the accountancy, into Accrual Intentions. There's a few places where I haven't set up automations. It would be easy to do, by the way, and this being a great example because the discovery form's in Air Manual, and so I could have just set up an automation with Zap and whatever. But I partly want to see how it's moving stuff through, and I've already seen loads of examples where it creates files that I wasn't really expecting it to, and I've just stumbled upon them and been able to review them with some hilarious results. For example, in that first phase where it did the 107 deliverables, one of the deliverables was a team workshop on values run by the head of HR, Holly Culture. And she had got this document that had all of the core values of the firm that are on the website with what does this mean to us? And then quotes from team members about what that value means to them. And that was just like one of the 107 files in there. So yeah, I haven't set up loads of automations that I easily could have done and exist in most firms because I wanted to be careful about what it was doing. For example, it can't send emails. So if you do get an email reply from your discovery form, it's because I've had to copy and paste their reply to you. It can do those things easily. But anyway, so I take the file and give it to Accrual Intentions. And Sunny Rapport, the customer relationships manager, took my discovery form through the process against the lead scoring criteria, assessing my company as if it were a genuine potential client. And she gave it a 48 out of 100 score, which puts it in the weak fit category. But honestly, that's valid. Like, she applied the criteria correctly. I just had to then explain to her, we're doing a test, so you have to let me in anyway. But that's perhaps one of the first insights, is that the bottleneck there wasn't the AI capability. It was human preference there. Like, firstly, to even set the lead scoring criteria, having made those decisions and being happy with the criteria being used. And then she was able to use the criteria and applied it correctly in this case. But it was only my preference that meant that I pushed it through anyway and accepted a client that, all things being equal, we wouldn't have done. 7 out of 91 decisions for those tasks. And really, those 7 decisions are the ones that actually define the firm. And that is still going to be important even as AI gets better. Now, you might think that with 7 out of 91 things being with me and the rest being with AI, that AI has basically got it handled, right? Not quite. So I asked Cash O'Clock, who's essentially my AI management accountant, to produce the management accounts for this side consulting business I have. And he followed the process step by step. Each template filled in, every calculation completed, and the P&L came back showing £4,063 profit over this particular period, like 9-month period, right? And I said, oh, this is pretty good. You got clean numbers, you got a clear outcome. All of this makes sense. And meanwhile, Debbie, my AI bookkeeper, essentially, she's the technical accounting lead, I think it says on the website. They're quite fluid with their roles. They sometimes forget them, which I've seen in human firms as well. So she ran a forensic analysis on the balance sheet, unprompted, by the way. And she spotted something. She identified that there was 0 salary expenses showing on the profit and loss, but clear salary outflows from the bank. And so she concluded proactively that there must be 9 months of missing payroll journals, and that when those were posted and reconciled, the picture would change. And she was right. She was correct. For this business, the way that I'd set up the data, which I had made some changes, etc., to make it trickier in some places and anonymize it in others, she was right. That's exactly what was missing. And so £4,000 of profit became a £39,000 loss when that was allowed for. Note that one of the amazing things was that Debbie was able to create a import for Excel or for Xero of the manual journals that needed to go in so that it would correctly do it. And I checked them all and they were right to the penny, which is really impressive and saved a lot of time. Problem is, that's a £43,000 swing. And Cash O'Clock had stated the first number with exactly the same confidence that Debbie had stated the correction. And then the whole team had said all steps have been completed successfully. And that's a really dangerous sentence in AI, because when it tells you all steps have been completed successfully, what that's essentially saying is you need to check that all steps have been completed successfully. I was very conscious that every time my AI team came with, oh yeah, and done, this is great. We know anyone who's been using ChatGPT, etc., it'll tell you something that's obviously completely wrong and it'll say it with confidence and you correct it and it goes, oh yeah, of course you're right. Here's the answer. Same confidence. And that's true. Like, for example, the AI team, Cash and Debbie, had concluded that the business bills clients quarterly and stated that with absolute confidence. But for this particular business, the way that the invoice dates were set, actually, that wasn't the trend. The invoices are sent when the work is done. And there's no quarterly billing cycle in there. The AI just wrote it into the report as fact. It didn't ask, it didn't check, it didn't flag it as an assumption. And when I put this to Debbie, in her words, the numbers always tell the truth. They were just being quiet about it at first, which is enigmatic to the point of being meaningless, I think, from Debbie. But then when it comes to these mistakes, like the materiality piece is important. Like what mistakes are made makes a difference. Little minor things, it's fine. A penny, it's fine. But here's one that really stopped me. Grace Ledger, the AI managing partner, had drafted our terms of business as part of the 91 tasks at the beginning of setting up the foundations of the business. She produced in fairness, beautiful document with 16 required sections and money laundering regulations and Proceeds of Crime Act and GDPR and Late Payment Act. It was all properly structured, legally looked correct to me. Flawless execution in many ways. One problem. Our firm, our Accrual Intentions accountancy firm, isn't AML registered. Therefore, that's anti, for those who aren't familiar, that's anti-money laundering registered, as in you've got to be registered with the HMRC if you're going to provide real, actual accounting and bookkeeping services, not pretend experimental ones like me. You have to be registered so that you can make sure that the company that you're working with is a proper company with proper directors and that they're not doing anything that they're not meant to be and laundering money and all that kind of stuff. But you have to register. You can't just start doing this stuff. And so operating under those terms of business would have been a criminal offense. Now, Grace had no way of knowing that, I suppose, directly. I suppose you might have hoped that in the vast directories of the web, that'd be something that should be aware. But from her perspective, she executed her process perfectly. The process just didn't include check whether we're legally allowed to operate. Now, that wasn't even the most obvious mistake that they made, because I was looking through the mountain of documents that the team created, including some very funny ones, and there's more I will be able to share. But I spotted that every single client-facing document, all the templates, everything, like their engagement letter template, proposal template, welcome email template, everything, had produced the wrong email domain or web address. So rather than being accrualintentions.com, they'd put accrual.ai, which is someone else's business entirely, which I've checked. So we were about to commit a criminal offense while directing our clients to a completely different company. Which, is interesting. And I guess here's the thing that should terrify you. At no point did it hesitate. There's no warning, no flag, no are you sure, no please check that this is all legal and you should seek advice. Just confident, professional, and dangerously wrong. Now, you might think that after all this, the conclusion is AI isn't ready. It's not going to replace anything in accountancy firms or indeed professional services or any role anywhere. But based on my experiments so far, that's not the right conclusion. And it's way more interesting and nuanced than that. Now, one of the things was that over 5 sessions of getting the Accrual Intentions team to create deliverables and start testing it with my own firm and so on, one of the things I noticed was that my role changed completely. When I first started, I was reviewing every single output, I was catching errors, I was fixing formatting, I was going and changing the reference documents that I'd provided, which includes the domain that they easily could have gone and looked at. I was making those changes. After a few sessions, I wasn't doing any of that. I was spotting strategic insights and directing their application of their processes across multiple deliverables simultaneously. I was giving them feedback and making suggestions that they were then implementing and highlighting what I then needed to review. Quality improved, efficiency improved. I went from essentially being an accountant to a manager of an AI team of accountants in less than a week. And the skills that made me good at doing the work myself, if I'd been doing the bookkeeping, if I'd been doing the management reports, the attention to detail, the personal execution, some of those could be argued to get in the way once I was trying to do the orchestrating task of managing the AI to produce the output that we needed. So perhaps the future isn't do your job, but with AI, it's become the person who manages AI doing your job. And that's a fundamentally different skill set. And I think this is coming to every business eventually. If you're in professional services, you'll feel it earlier, possibly even first, whether you're ready for it or not, whether it's a good thing or not. I think it can be made good, though. I think that there is definitely a future in which AI and humans collaborate really well, and that actually it can make it better for clients and our teams and our leaders. And I've got some ideas on how to do that. And that's what I'm going to be testing next. Now, if you want the full version, every disaster, every surprise, every lesson, and want to start from day one, then do find me on LinkedIn. I've been sharing this story daily, including some of the conversations that were had between me and the AI team and between themselves. I share it as a script. I'll set that up as part of the firm setup, that any observations and interactions, etc., would then be turned into these little scripts. And so I've been able to share those as part of it. And it's weird. It quickly gets weird. So do check that out. But also, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to De-Stress Your Business podcast to make sure that you don't miss future episodes and updates on this. Plus, we've got some amazing interviews coming up with some really insightful people, including authors and leaders that have got absolute brilliant gems to share with you about how you can be running your business more successfully while reducing the stress in it. But otherwise, until next time, have fun.